Hey guys, it's Clint. I'm back with another episode of Now You Know, and I have the distinct pleasure today of being with Beverly and Bob Elliott. And welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Been looking forward to this since I knew we were going to do it, and I want to jump right in.
Okay.
We're going to talk about something that you both are very much involved in, and I want to dig into it a little bit, and it's the
African American Museum of Southern Arizona.
Beautiful. Run with it, Beverly.
Well, I'll just tell you real quickly how it started.
Please.
During the pandemic, there were a lot of things that happened that were sad. We lost family members, but there's always a silver lining, especially if you believe. And I had a grandson who was a kindergartner, believe it or not, when the pandemic started. That was a little tough for him to all of a sudden, instead of being at recess and playing with your friends, now he's sitting in front of a screen. But by the time first grade rolled around, a year later, because they're still in the pandemic, they're still home, one of his first grade teacher gave the whole class an assignment to do a report on a famous African-American hero or shero. So in the meantime, I have no idea that our little grandson Jody is listening to me on our breaks, and I'm talking to my friends back in Michigan about the museum that I'm on advisory board for back there. So Jody continues to do his research. I think he looked at the normal icons, Martin Luther King, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington. Phyllis Wheatley, I think, is who he eventually did a report on, who was a famous poet. Well, I have to tell you, he continued to start writing this report, and all of a sudden he looks at me and he goes, a museum is where you find older things, right? And stories about older people. I said, yes. He said, well, you work for a museum back in Michigan, kind of. I said, yes. He said, well, where is the museum here that teaches me about African-American people? I said, well, Joe, that's a good question because I like going to museums.
Yes.
And I can tell you, I don't think there's one around here, but I know there used to be a couple people had collections, but let me check. So we checked with our friends back in Michigan who have connections with the Museum Association of America, the Smithsonian, and they come back and say, there's not a museum that's registered anywhere in the state of Arizona that says African American Museum.
Really?
Yeah.
And this is coming from a 6-year-old.
This is coming
or 5-year-old.
This is coming from a 7-year-old at the time.
Right.
Yeah, but he was going from 6 to 7, and he's been home with me most of the time, along with our daughter and her husband and her family. We kind of stayed in our bubble,
right?
And my husband. And so after I found that out, I went back and told him, I was like, Jody, I'm sorry to tell you, there's not a museum here. Well, his first inclination was to go, what? That can't be true, or maybe there just weren't any black people here, or weren't they doing anything? I was like, no, Jody, that is not the case. The case is probably what happens to most African-American families. We have them in a trunk, we have them in the garage, we have them in the basement, the attic, and we have stories in our head, but it's just there's no place you can go to find them. So he looks around, and he looks at me and goes, well, I think you should start a museum, Nanu, and I'll help you. So that's kind of how it started, and I started talking to my friends who are great mentors back in Michigan. They put me on all kind of webinars and told me which organizations I should sign up with to just do some research on, what does it take to start a museum. I am not a historian. I'm not a curator. I'm not a docent. So all those things that you hear about how people run a museum, that is not me. I'm a retired educator and a counselor, and that's been my focus for probably 35 years. So I had no experience on starting a museum.
Yeah, but, this was during, Black History Month, which is February.
Right.
And so Bev and Jody come to me and say, we have this idea. What do you think about it? So they tell me. I said, all right, this is not an easy project.
Right.
You got to start like a blank page. You got to put the whole building together, the infrastructure, the corporate governance, everything else. So since I'm still doing a few tax returns and it's February, I said, can we start this discussion after April 15th? I would really appreciate
and
that.
And my break after that.
and so they hit that night. We all went to dinner.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then started the conversation.
So that was 2021 by then.
Yes, it was 2021.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And you just had the grand opening
last week on the 14th.
Yeah.
of February. And
January.
January. I keep
Right.
saying that.
I know.
Yeah.
You're thinking Valentine's
yes,
Day.
Yeah.
exactly. Yes.
Spring training opening
There
day.
we go. I tell you. So so it's not been 2 years.
That is
since,
crazy.
Yeah.
And it
has not-
started with a child.
Yes,
That's right.
it started. Yep, out
A
of the mouths
young
of
child,
babes.
yeah.
That's right. Yeah, no filter. Kids at that
Right.
age just ask questions. Well, why isn't this?
Right.
And the way I looked at it is there are probably a lot of people who are older who never would ask that question. And so, where is it, or why don't we have one?
Right.
And so I thought, he's probably right. And just checking with the community, we started making phone calls. What do you think? Is there a need for this? How do you think the community will respond? And so most of our
I'm sure
friends,
that was all favor. Yes, and let's do it.
Yes.
A lot of yeses, but at the same time, a lot of people were very hesitant because they feel like it's a big project.
Mm-hmm.
How's it going to actually happen?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to put all this together? Because it would be a big project. If you're going to be the first, like we tell our grandkids, there's only one first.
That's right.
So if we're going to be the first, we're going to be the only one in the state. It has to be done right. And so at that point,
what did you do then? So you went, the tax season's now over.
That's right.
So we're end of April, 1st of May.
Yes.
What was the next step?
Well, the first
I'm sure
decision-
you were busy throughout
Yes,
that whole
I was.
process.
Very,
no
very
doubt.
busy.
But
Very
the first
busy.
thing we talked about was, okay, if you think about businesses, there's that old saying, location, location, location. And during the pandemic, a number of African-American museums went under because they had their own buildings and they had to fund and keep the building up before you have any money to do any programming. So we said the University of Arizona would probably be a good place to do this. In my past, I was the chair of the audit committee for the U of A Foundation. So Beverly and I said, well, let's go talk to J.P. Rosniak, who's the president CEO of the U of A Foundation, run the idea by him. And he said, I like this. I really like this. So he brings in the vice president for DEI at that time, Ivy Banks. And so we met with her and JP. They said, no, we like this. Then it's like, okay, we can do this. Well, what is this?
Yeah.
Yes.
You got to
Yes.
come up with a site. You have to have a place. You have to have programming. You have to have volunteers. You have to have supporters. You have to have community support, financial support. A lot goes into it.
And you got to have something in there to show.
That's
as a
right.
museum.
You have to have the artifacts.
There's a show and tell involved here.
Exactly.
Right.
So how long did that process take to?
Well,
Because we've only got less than 2 years from where we are
so-
now.
yes.
So that
Well,
had to be
that comes from
accelerated.
working probably about 12 hours a day for the last 18
2
months. Yeah. Last 18 months. But what has been probably the most challenging is to get the word out. And so we thought the best thing to do is to find some people who are in town who are movers and shakers, not just to be a part of our board, but our advisory board. And our advisory board has been absolutely wonderful. Our board is a very hardworking board also. So there are a lot of people out there that we motivated to help us. And the first thing we thought that we wanted to do, according to what I had studied in webinars, was to get online. So Tina Johnson, who is a friend and a top volunteer, she knew how to kind of put things together, but she said, you're going to have to tell me what we're going to put on this and what you want it to look like. And we went with a company called CS Designs, and we started putting together a website. And
It's a local company.
A local
CS
company.
Designs here in Tucson.
Yeah, so we went with this company, and in the meantime, what we're doing is we signed a contract with a videographer, and we talked to a couple churches so we wouldn't have to pay for a venue to all of a sudden start getting oral histories. So, of course, these beautiful oral historians ended up telling more people, and they were telling people. So we were starting to build this whole list of people who we barely touched the surface at about, we'd love to record you.
Right.
So that way we're kind of digitizing and preserving these life stories along with the photos that go with it. So it just began to build, and we started putting those things on our website, and we started getting people calling and saying, I have items. Yeah. Now we're at the point where people are saying, I have a collection that you might want to look at. And one of the gentlemen on our board, Bill Ponder, was a former CEO for the Arizona Historical Society. So he knows a lot about museums and collections. So we developed a collections policy, a deed of gift policy, and even a loan policy. So
wow, that just in and of itself.
Yes.
the effort that's gone in over the last 20 months or
Yes.
24 months is
Yes.
like staggering.
Yes.
I know, having been a creator of a few items myself, businesses, it's so tough to take an idea, a concept, and a blank piece of paper and turn it into reality. But you had that grandmother force driving you behind you, so you had a motivator that a lot of people don't have when they're starting businesses and stuff. So, great grand opening. You opened, and I want to touch briefly on upcoming events. And
Okay.
I know there's one coming up next weekend
Yes.
that we're real excited about.
Yes.
You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, this will be our second fireside chat. The first one was in around November 17th when we had Ruby Bridges here. A lot of people do not know that name by itself, but everybody knows that Norman Rockwell painting of the 6-year-old black girl being escorted in New Orleans as a 6th grader, escorted by 6 years old, by 4 large white marshals as she integrated the New Orleans school system. And that was the catalyst to integrate schools in the South, which then spread across the whole United States. So she was here and talked to we had a sellout of 1,200 at Palo Verde High School. Our second one will be February 3rd, where my college coach's daughter, Stacy Snowden. Stacy's the only living heir of the Snowden family. She will be here to tell the story because Coach Snowden was the first black Division I major college, major university, black head coach in Division I in basketball. And it didn't happen in a major metropolitan area like a Detroit or Chicago, L.A., New York. It happened here in Tucson, Arizona. And so she's going to tell her story, the family story, about leaving the Michigan area. He was the assistant coach at University of Michigan, coming out here, the things that they had to go through. Obviously, a lot of racism and a lot of death threats and everything else. But she can articulate that better. She's also going to present what they call a sizzle tape. So they're in the process of doing a documentary on Coach's life. And this is going to be a little 13-minute clip of it. This much I can tell you, Clint. The soundtrack, if you like Motown, man, he's from Detroit,
And I do.
then you're going to love the soundtrack.
Yeah. We talked music before.
That's right.
And we have we're all the same era and a lot of the stuff. And I just became aware of it a couple of days ago. I was doing a little homework and research about what's going on. McHale is now 50
Awesome.
years.
Yes.
In the next couple of weeks, you played.
Not in that game.
Not in that game?
No. Now, Coach Snowden was hired. This is the 50th anniversary when Coach Snowden was hired.
McHale, though.
And so his first year here, he played the first half of the season in Bear Down Gym.
Right.
Second half over McHale. Now, when Coach Snowden came here, Bear Down only seated 3,000. Prior to his coming here, they averaged less than 1,000 people a game. Coach Snowden came, got the hype. They sold out Bear Down. Then in the middle of the season, without an established season ticket base, moved over to McHale and sold out 14,000 there also.
And that's 50 years.
50 years
this
ago,
coming,
the opening of
in the
McHale.
next couple of weeks.
February 2nd.
I didn't realize it. Is that right?
I think it's February 2nd.
That's my birthday, by the way.
That's right.
That's my birthday.
Oh,
and
happy
it's one of the big ones.
That's right. And so February 2nd, they're going to honor the 50th anniversary of opening McHale. They're also going to, one of my old teammates, Al Fleming, is going to be inducted into the Ring of Honor. And Al, unfortunately, passed away in 2003, 20 years ago. But his family members will be here to receive the recognition.
Hey, just an aside, I saw a poll the other day or an article the other day. We know he's number 2 in scoring, but you were rated the 6th best player to ever play at University of Arizona. Did you know that?
In 50 years, that's a lot. That's a lot of people that's come
that's
through
good.
here. And the other day.
Did you see that article I'm referring to? Number 6. That's pretty cool. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
and,
of all the people that have played down there, come on, Bob.
Well, and then last week, Ernie McCray was inducted into officially into the Ring of Honor. Now, Ernie McCray played here in the late 50s. He scored 46 points in one game.
No three-pointers.
No three-pointers back then, right? No
we covered that. That didn't come
Yes.
around to the 70s.
Nobody has broken that
that
record
amazing?
since the late 50s. And a lot of us tried
Yeah.
and didn't get it.
We wrote a lot of letters to make sure that the athletic department didn't forget about him as
Right.
well. Once the museum was up, we started writing letters just for different African American athletes that had been at the U of A, or other people who'd been at the U of A as students that were the first,
Right.
that had not been recognized. So we're hoping, and the university has been amazing at saying, okay, you're right, we forgot about this person, and it's not necessarily the people who are running the university right now. So we're really excited that the university is starting to look back at history and recognizing some of the African Americans that are part of the American history,
That's
the quilt of
Right.
the American history, so to speak, at the university.
Yeah, the athletic director, Dave Hickey, has been very supportive of all the different initiatives that we have. In particular, Bev can share that story about getting Fred Batiste into the Sports Hall of Fame. And this is something where divine intervention,
Yeah.
yeah, no question.
Yeah, there was the gentleman, Fred Batiste. I had been doing some research and found out, he was the first black athlete to ever letter at the U of A. And he, finished school, did all the things he was supposed to do, but we've never heard of him. He even broke records, and there's even some football record that still stands. So I ended up sending some emails to the Hall of Fame people, Rocky LaRose, and it was kind of interesting. She calls me back and says, hey, you know what? We're going to induct him into the U of A Athletic Hall of Fame. I was overjoyed. And she said, well, there's a problem. We don't know where the family is because they don't live here anymore. And I had a friend that I'd probably known 30 years, and she lives in California. And she had mentioned that she had, come to Tucson a few times, and, she had family here years ago. And her name was Renee McDonald. Well, I never put anything together, but I thought, you know what? Her family used to be here years ago. Let me call and ask her. And I'd asked around town and nobody knew. So I called and said, hey, Renee, give me a call back. I'm trying to find family of Fred Batiste. Maybe you know somebody. She calls me back crying. It's her father. Oh, yes.
Yeah, you were right.
Telling you.
We were both crying
Yeah.
on the phone.
Oh, absolutely.
I was so overjoyed and so excited for her. She was just absolutely in her world, knowing that the university was going to honor her
recognize her
dad,
father.
and she and her husband and her children showed up for that
That's
induction.
awesome.
So I just felt like I might have had a small piece in that,
Well, you
but
did.
I just
You
felt
did,
like
yeah.
what a beautiful thing that the museum and has kind of allowed us to do certain research on things, to bring things to fruition and bring it to the light, so to speak, so that people can say, oh, I didn't know that. And that's what we want people to say about the museum. I didn't know that.
You mentioned earlier when the Snowden family came here 50 years ago.
Right?
I remember moving here. I've been here 35 years. And I don't remember exactly when it happened, but Arizona did not honor the Martin Luther King
Yes.
birthday until I think after I moved here is when it actually
96.
became.
Yes.
Okay.
It came in, it was.
So it was definitely after that. I couldn't
Yes.
remember the exact year, and you cleared that
Yes.
up for me.
In
And
93.
it cost it
was,
cost the state of Arizona.
absolutely.
You know, the Super Bowl,
Super Bowl,
93, they said
absolutely.
no.
Yeah, the Super Bowl of 93,
I remember Stevie Wonder was supposed to come here and do a concert. He said, nope, not coming.
Yeah.
No Martin Luther King holiday, no Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
And yet, to piggyback off something else you said, when you started your process making the phone calls, the community came together. And having been in this community now for over 20 years in the Tucson area, was in Phoenix prior to that. But this is a town that does come together. Especially if the cause is
Yes.
right or broad reaching. I've learned that over the 2 decades I've been here. Boy, you can rally a group of people in a pretty quick time if there's a common cause or a legitimate reason for us to come together.
Well, I think it's the beauty of this area. You know, we might have 1 million people in this metropolis, but there might as well be one stoplight at Broadway and Stone. I mean, it's just how we are. It's got a very homey, down home, small town feel to it. And I think that's what really differentiates Tucson from any other metropolitan area like a Phoenix.
I think it's unique to itself. I don't know how you could, again, people that weren't born, I feel like this is my hometown. It's
Right.
not. My hometown's in Illinois.
Right.
But we were at lunch yesterday, David and I, with Craig Coulter. I don't know if you know Craig at the conversation was kind of almost that. Somebody mentioned a name. Well, I know him through, and it's like, well, how do you? What? It's because there's that small town feel in a big city, and it goes border to border.
That's right.
And I guarantee you, if we sat here and threw a few names around, we already have, but then one or two. It's the old Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
Right.
6 degrees to
That's
Kevin.
right.
We're all
That's
there.
right. That's right.
That is so
In
cool.
Tucson, my old broadcast partner for years was a guy named Dave Sitton, and Dave was very connected to the community. And Dave used to have a saying: if you yourself can't make the call to get to who you need, if you can't make one call to get to that person,
Right.
you're just not in the mix. You're not in the mix.
You haven't
'Cause
been
that's
here long enough.
Yeah, that's Tucson.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
I met him. Good dude.
Oh, I'm telling you, that was my man. Yeah, we
He's
go
a good
back to
dude.
1973.
Is that right?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
both-
well, I guess so.
He graduated from high school. He was on the baseball team. I'm on the basketball team. We all stayed in Graham Hall. The basketball team was on the first floor, the baseball team on the second floor. And we always got together because back then nobody had TVs in the room.
Right.
You had to go down to the TV room. Everybody, had, in the dorm.
Yeah.
And we're all down there for Star Trek. That was it.
Yeah, yeah.
We'd all be down
Friday nights, right?
there. That's right.
You know what? This has been a real pleasure. This has been. I told you since we started discussing this. Actually, probably maybe even October was that the first time
You'd be right.
that we discussed this, and then we knew we were going to do it after the holidays, and so this has always been like a red letter date, and when I knew it was happening, I'm like, I cannot wait to, and I'm thrilled that you guys invited me to be a part of what you're doing next week.
Love you to have
so
on the panel.
cool.
We have
Thank
a
you
panelist of
for
community
agreeing.
people like yourself, and we'll have a panelist of former players
I'm really
that play
looking
for
forward
Coach
to
Snowden.
that. That is
So
really,
and
really
then
cool.
we'd be remiss to not at least give the website.
Yes, please.
www.aamsaz.org. So www.think of African American Museum, AAM, Southern Arizona, SAZ.org. And from there you can have access to different oral histories and different legacy stories and different events and how to contact us. And there's a little red button that says donate. And don't forget to see that one also.
Don't hit that donate. Got to pay some
We
light
certainly
bills.
appreciate it.
Hey,
Yes.
I want to real quick. You mentioned a documentary or a movie or that's coming about Coach Snowden.
Yes, Stacy is in the process of working with
cannot wait to-
a couple of outstanding producers and directors
Cannot
in
wait
Los
to see
Angeles,
that.
and she's putting together a documentary about her father. And we're all looking forward to seeing the full blown documentary.
Yeah,
But
that'd
she's-
be really
She's
exciting.
being very generous in sharing a sizzle reel. But of course, we're going to try to get her to do a big premiere here when that
Absolutely.
when that documentary
Red
comes
carpet,
out.
Oh,
everything
absolutely.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
absolutely.
yes.
And you know what? You'd pack the you'd pack the place
Yes,
because,
yes.
as I said to you off camera, I've talked to a lot of people that were here through that whole tenure to get their feed, and we don't think about it now because here especially if you aren't aware of that history, but boy, the work
Yes.
Right.
that a lot of people have done and names you've mentioned today that contributed that
Yes.
didn't get a lot of attention
Yes.
and it's time we talk about those people and shout
Exactly.
those
Right.
people out and give them their credit.
That's right.
Well, you know what? I know you guys are in a hurry to get somewhere else.
Appreciate it though, Clint.
It's our
Thanks for
pleasure.
having us.
so much,
Looking forward to
Clint.
seeing you. And guys, real quick, we will have all the information on how to get a hold of the museum, how to get a hold of Beverly, how to get a hold of Bob. Make sure you hit that donate button.
And the book.
And the book.
That's right.
Yeah, let's don't forget the book.
Tucson, a basketball town.
I just finished reading it.
Right.
And I've read it. I've got it on my phone. And I've got a hard copy. I'm gonna have to bring the hard copy
So I can sign it.
so you can sign it for me. That is a great read. I love that.
Good.
I love
Glad
that.
you enjoyed it.
I did. I'm glad you guys could be here. This has
All
been a
right.
lot of fun.
Appreciate it,
Thank
man.
You.
Thank you
It's
so
good.
much.
Thank you.
See you in a couple of weeks at
Yes,
the
you will.
Stacey Snowden's chat.
Yes, you will. Thank you, Bob. Thank
All
you,
right.
Beverly.
Thank you, Clint.